just share this with you. You can take some notes, but the first one is really, what is that big idea? Every book, I think, has a fundamental truth that weaves all the way through the book. Just as a quick example, Martin Luther King, what was his foundational truth? His big idea was that all men are created equal. Now, is that a new idea? No. But he was so passionate and so connected with that, that became the big idea that ran through everything that he did in his life. Okay, I'll guarantee everybody here, if you've already published, there's a big idea. But so I really flesh that out. What is that big idea that's going to inspire people to take action? Right? I want people to read my book and take action. Okay. I think it has to be important. It has to be interesting to the audience, right? So think about, if you're thinking about your next book or your first book, what's important to you? What's interesting to your audience? What is maybe some of those big objectives that you have in your life? And is there a big idea that serves that? Some of those things that God put on your heart. I think, a big idea is something that helps shift dreams from possibility to probability. Second area is, what does that topic, that big idea, look like in the context of my audience? Right? My book's on purpose. My book is really, if you actually look under the covers, it's really on a journey of finding your identity in Christ, because that's my big idea. I believe that has to be in place before you can truly connect to your calling and your purpose. Okay, but what does that look like in the world of people that I knew would be reading it? Right? If it's a book on politics or HR or parenting, right? What are those? What are their feelings on that? How would their daily life change if they adopted my big idea, your big idea? Okay? Because I think for us to get somebody to adopt our idea, we have to understand their world. So I would put some thought into that. The third area that I would dig into is, what happens if somebody does not adopt my big idea? What does status quo look like? What could happen to my audience if things stay the same, right? When you ask people to change their perspective, it can feel confrontational. Okay, so how do I get the audience? So this was my assumption. The audience would have a natural tendency, maybe not to take on our big idea, that message we want to take into the world. Okay, so, and what would then the consequences of that be? Okay, so I kept working on my big idea and tried to get it down to one sentence, and then I shared it with my forum, I shared it with friends, and just trying to see if it could resonate. Here's the other one, the fourth area is, what's the promise? If they adopted your big idea, what's the result that they would get? Right? Brett, in his book, Biblical HR, if they adopted approaching HR and leadership and management from a truly kingdom perspective, what's possible? And can I show them how to get those amazing results? So what's the promise? And then the rewards. This is something I would write down, and sometimes these were hard, but if they actually adopted the idea, and this is where I would really try to be genuine and specific, but what would the rewards be financially if they adopted your idea? Emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And I would sit there and brainstorm in all those ideas. And then that became the foundation of how I would start looking at what Terry described, right? That process and putting everything together. But I wanted, this then would kind of almost be my guide as I put that together, and it wove through all the chapters and identified content I had to make.